And right now, we are going to speak with the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares. General Miyares, good morning. Welcome to the program.
Great to be with you. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely. So first, a quick question here. It is kind of in a big story. First, we the General Assembly that it's not actually going on properly because Richmond's old decrepit water system basically broke down in the storm. What's it like being up there in Richmond with no decent water?
Well, it's a bit of a challenge. I've been going home each night back home to Virginia Beach, and I'm in the car right now on the way in. But it is a bit of a challenge because right now, in my opinion, maybe City Hall wasn't quite prepared and flat-footed. But I think we're now on day 3 or day 4 of a request that if you're going to drink anything other than bottled water, you need to boil it. So it's definitely a challenge, and ask your listeners to pray for those in the Richmond area, the city of Richmond, as we get through this.
And then, too, this is already the short session. They're missing days here. Is there any provision in law to extend this session? Can the General Assembly just vote itself an extra week? How would that work if they wanted to have more time?
That has happened before, where they have voted to extend session. That may happen. I also would not be surprised if there is a Saturday session or two. There's usually a great sense of urgency, particularly in election year, for people to be done with the people's work and get home to their districts. So I fully expect that they will manage through that, even if they have to go into overtime.
Well, let's talk about some legislation that's going to be coming before the General Assembly this year. And if I recall from talking to you, you support the ban on TikTok that's being argued today at the Supreme Court. But we are going to have legislation addressing that here in Virginia. And so before you tell me about that, though, how do you don't see any First Amendment problems with a TikTok ban in the United States?
It's a totally different lane. It's not dealing with the First Amendment. It is not trying to stop content on TikTok. It is simply saying we're not going to allow a foreign government to control one of the largest media platforms in the country. Just like in the height of the Cold War, we did not allow the Soviet Union to own NBC News or own CNN or own any of the New York Times. We have a geopolitical rival that has used a platform, and people are like, TikTok isn't a media outlet. It is for young people. You can look at surveys. I've seen between 30 to 50% of young people say their primary ways of collecting news and information about the world is actually through TikTok social media apps. So the old media model of, the Washington Post, New York Times, or NBC, that's not the case anymore, particularly for, 18 to 29-year-olds. The second is that it is a data collection. If you have TikTok on your phone, congratulations. The Chinese Communist Party now knows your text messages, your photos, your contacts, where you're going, and when you go. And so just from a national security standpoint. And so we're confident in our legal argument. It's not saying that it's going to end TikTok. It's saying TikTok has to exist, but it can't be owned by a Chinese company. And there is a Chinese law on the books that any time the government needs to collect data from any of their Chinese companies, they have to be turned over. There's no court order. There's no hearing. There's no probable cause for any reason at any time. And so it is clearly something that has been compromised. We obviously all saw with horror the information the Chinese government has hacked into our telecom services as well. And so we need to both recognize what that is. And then you layer on top of that the huge, debilitating, absolutely debilitating impact social media has had on our young people. This is a generation that has the highest rates of depression and anxiety and addiction that we've ever seen. And TikTok definitely has helped contribute to that by the algorithms and the content of what they're posting online directly aimed at our teenagers or 15 or 16-year-olds. These aren't videos about golf. These are videos that glorify drug use, videos that glorify hiding your social media profile from your parents. It is overwhelmingly negative videos that are impacting our kids as well.
And the pending legislation, this would allow Virginians to sue TikTok. How would that work?
So this would create what's called a private cause of action. So there's actually a federal law that's already been in effect already called the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, which says that it requires you, if you're a social media platform, to verify that this person is of a minimum age, right? No younger than 15. Well, we now know so many of these social media companies they don't actually have proper verification at all. So it essentially says if you're gonna say you're abiding by federal privacy laws, and you're confirming that that minors can't get their information taken and then sold to a third party, then if you realize that you are not, particularly TikTok, which uses pretty deceptive practices, which for the longest time is self-verified and said, yeah, it could be an 11-year-old and say, hey, actually, I'm 19, but they get on the TikTok, then it creates a private cause of action that you as a parent can bring a private cause of action in civil court against TikTok.
Now, I also have a bill in this session that would let your office conduct criminal prosecutions in cases of a child sexual assault or human trafficking with children. Do I take this as an indication that your office and maybe people in the General Assembly don't think local prosecutors are getting the job done?
Well, I think what you've seen a lot of these left-wing prosecutors that have been elected in these localities that have decided to act like social workers instead of criminal prosecutors. And time again, we've heard horrific stories of situations. We had a situation in Fairfax. We have one of these left-wing, aggressive, progressive prosecutors where it was a victim, a 5-year-old had been a victim for over a year of child rape, and essentially dropped some of the charges and gave a plea deal because this prosecutor, I guess, didn't like the fact that he was eligible for life in prison. Victims need a second chance, and we've had too many cases that have come to our attention. There's obviously areas of the law that we have original jurisdiction to prosecute, for example, child pornography cases. But a lot of our investigators as well noted that when we're going about after child pornographers and they go from viewing child pornography to then what they say going hands-on, the case has to be transferred to a local Commonwealth attorney. So this is, first of all, much more efficient for our investigators to go after. But yes, I do think these victims deserve a second chance when you have these prosecutors in some of these localities that simply just refuse to prosecute entire categories of crime, or they're seeking to cut plea deals every chance they get. You deserve to have a backup plan.
And so, do I take it then that that would, if they did have a conviction of some sort of a plea deal, this law would not be activated only if there was no prosecution? I mean, you want
No, yeah, this would be a situation where that it looks like the prosecutor is either going to null pros the charge,
okay,
which which can be brought back later, and so this gives that opportunity for at that point for us to then step in. Listen, we do prosecutions. At the largest division in the AG's office is actually the criminal division, and the way it's supposed to work is when localities need assistance or there's a certain case that requires maybe a heightened level of sophistication, we will come in, or maybe it's a resource or they have a conflict. And so we usually work very, 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 very closely with our Commonwealth attorneys. It's this handful around the state that have been elected with a lot of special interest left-wing money, a lot of it from out of state, that have come in and gotten them elected, and then they declare they're not going to prosecute entire categories of crime, or they drop charges. And so we've been working to in our way, because as you probably heard me say, I view my role as the Attorney General as the people's protector of Virginia. It's when you have victims, I want to be able to protect those victims.
We're speaking with the Attorney General of Virginia, Jason Miyares, here on WLNI. And this is a bill that I'm kind of intrigued by. But it's one that would require high school students to have a passing score on the U.S. naturalization test to graduate. What's once given to people who want to become citizens of the country. I've seen that test, and I have to tell you, I think it would be quite a challenge for a lot of high school students.
I don't think it would be, actually. I've seen the test as well. My own mother had to take that test when she fled Cuba. But I think one of your first roles in government, at least in our public schools, is, are you producing good citizens? And it asks just basic questions about the Bill of Rights, the Constitution, the three branches of government. We should hope that somebody who turns 18 that we are producing to go out into the world, and at that point they're an adult, that they have the same basic understanding of our Constitution and the unique nature of our country, that is somebody who has come here and become an immigrant and and is legally immigrated and become a U.S. citizen. I mean, think about this. Less than 1/3 of young people, 18 to 29, say they have a love of country. Only about 22%, the last poll I saw, they could name the three branches of government. By almost every objective measure, when you ask some of the most basic questions about our society, you have over 50% of 18 to 29-year-olds who think that the First Amendment means you can ban speech that they don't like. When the whole purpose of the First Amendment is obviously to protect speech, even if you don't personally like it or agree with it. So you have a generation of young people nationwide that are really struggling to understand what has made this idea of ordered liberty and what has made this country the American miracle. And, Plato said the two most important questions for a civilization is this: who teaches the children and what do they teach them? And I think a lot of individuals are seeing a generation of young people that don't have a clear concept of what has made this the last best hope on earth. And a lot of new citizens, new Americans do, that have come here, that they understand they have fled autocracy, they have fled horrific oppression, they realize America is indeed a remarkable country. We want our young people graduating from our high schools to have that same feeling. We think it's common sense that if it's a test that the United States government administers for you to be a new citizen to vote, then when you graduate from high school, you should be also administered this test as well as you join society.
All right, we'll leave it there for this morning. Virginia Attorney General Jason Miyares, thank you for joining us on WLNI.
Great to be with you. Thanks so much.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.